Let's see how many participants we have. Okay, it's live. I wonder how do I press the recording button? I'll just wait for 5 minutes before we start. Hi, Jessica. Sorry. I think we can start now. I had a problem looking at the audience. We had about 12 people in the chat, if that's okay.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, sure, I'll start. Welcome everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Jessica, and I'll introduce myself in the next slide. But I'm going to be talking today about how to get research experience as a medical student, and where to start and how to actually finish and hopefully end up with a publication or a prize. So just a bit about me and my journey so far. I'm a UK medical student in my 4th year. I took a gap year before getting into medical school because I didn't know a lot about the process, didn't realise how competitive it was, and didn't do the best in my interviews. So did physics, chemistry, biology and maths A-level in the UK, which is what we do before we go to university. I then worked in the NHS for a while, which is our national health system here, and then did some experience in the Dominican Republic. Finally got into medical school when I reapplied, and then I went to Cambridge for a year to do a master's in psychiatry. So I got involved in research for a year there, and then I'm currently back at medical school to complete my last 2 years. So an intercalation is a year out to do another degree, and I decided to do it there. So how did I get to Cambridge? First of all, is that during my preclinical years at King's, I got involved in a lot of things to do with the curriculum. So student selected components like SSEs, got my SSE published, did a systematic review for my scholarly project, which I did in year 3, and won 2 essay prizes in my 2nd year of med school, because I like writing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about essay competitions and how valuable they can be, not just in preclinical years, but anytime in med school, because, you know, essay writing is just something that you can become quite good at easily, more easily than you think. And I'll be talking a little bit about what it takes to write an essay, and then a bit about publication and where to find opportunities. So the first thing I wanted to focus on when it comes to writing a good essay is critical appraisal. So critical appraisal is to be critical of the literature you're reading. And it doesn't mean to criticize in a negative way, but instead question the information and opinions in the article. So you're going to be asking yourself, how do we know this? Is this true in every case or just in this instance? What do these results actually tell us? Are they clinically relevant or are they relevant in general? And then this can help you evaluate its overall reliability objectively. So you're supposed to be doing this from an objective point of view. And what I like to do to briefly appraise literature is ask, is it crap? Currency, when was it published? Relevance, how important is the information to your study or your essay questions objectives? Authority, who is the author and what are their credentials? Is it a peer-reviewed journal? Did it have a supervisor? So usually the supervisor will be the last author, who is the most senior person who oversaw the study. How reliable is the information? Does it lack citations? Are some of the links broken? Is it inaccurate? Another thing to be really make sure that you look out for as well is that some publications will be removed in erratum, so they've had an error in them, so they've been removed and then been republished. Has it been withdrawn? Has it been is there an addendum because there was an error in it? So look out for all those things as well. And finally, the purpose. So is it a well-balanced, independent piece of research, or is it intended to sell a product or idea? So be very wary of the conflict of interest statement, which every journal published in a peer review article journal should have. That will tell you whether it was funded, who it was funded by, and why, and how where the conflicts of interest might be for the authors. So I decided to include an example of the publication for my SSE. Sorry that this is a bit small, but if you do zoom in, we can go through the methodology of my SSE and then a paragraph that you could write if you were critically appraising what I've written. So critical appraisal, obviously we've gone through CRAP. This study was published in 2021. We're looking at vitamin B12 and we want to know whether ethnicity influences it. So the title matches our study, so it's relevant. Authority, I wouldn't say I have the most authority, but the last author is the lead of a lab at St. Thomas's Hospital, so you can be quite confident that things were done correctly. It's published in a peer-reviewed journal, and the purpose is to look at patients in a primary care setting and see whether ethnicity influenced vitamin B12. Now, what you want to then do is look at the methods. How was the research actually conducted? So you want to first look at the study design and sampling. So in my study, it was a cross-sectional study, so it was taken at one point in time. So that's a snapshot of those patients in primary care at that time. There's benefits and disadvantages to that. I mean, the benefits are, for this study, we just wanted to look at patterns. We weren't making any clinical judgments that, you know, every Black person is going to have this B12 or every Asian person is going to have this B12. We just wanted to summarize patterns we were seeing. But if you wanted to make those kind of conclusions, you'd obviously have to take samples from different points of time, or you would want to do a randomized controlled trial. Your control group might be white and your experimental group might be other ethnicities. So think about that, because not every study is perfect, but if it suits what they're trying to say and they're not making any wild conclusions from it, you can be quite happy with that. Can the sampling technique lead to bias? So you've got to look at the distribution of patients or people they had in their study. In my study, I had 69% female, which is not the perfect 50-50, which could lead to bias. Maybe females have higher B12 or maybe they have lower B12. We know that, for example, in pregnancy, women are taking folate. Even if they want to conceive, they take folate. That has an impact on B12. So just be thinking that through and check in their limitations whether they've mentioned that. The median age was 50, which is a good spread of ages, because that means that the middle age was 50, which is nice. And were the individuals of most interest able to, least likely to participate, or unable to give consent? So what this means is that in some studies, for example, I've done studies on mental health, some people with the worst mental health will actually not want to take part in a study or a survey about mental health. It can be quite triggering. They're very hard to reach. So you've got to keep that in mind. You know, is this sample going to be representative of a particular disease you may be looking at? And because we weren't looking at a condition, we were just looking at patterns of vitamin B12, whether people were invited or not didn't depend on their disease status. And what is the sample size? So in this study, I had almost 50,000 patients. So you're thinking, wow, nice big sample size. What they're saying is probably true. The measures. So this is quite well done in papers, I would say, when you're reading online. What measures did they use to, for example, in my paper, measure B12? Well, we did it in the lab and we used a certain machine, but every paper published in a peer-reviewed journal should say what measures they used. If you're having a survey, what questions did you ask? They might even enclose a copy of the survey in the appendix. How did they measure cancer rate? You know, did they do MRIs? Did they do this? So make sure that you're noting these things down. And checking that they had ethical approval, and whether the data was collected retrospectively and they're analysing it now, or they collected it as they went along, or they're looking to the future. So think about prospective versus retrospective data. Third thing, analyses. There's a statistical analysis section of every peer-reviewed paper, which is really nice. All of these papers follow the same sort of structure. So find that section and write down a few notes about what you understand about it. You don't need to know all the stats, but did they use a large sample size? Did they use statistical software? Were the stats appropriate for the paper? So if there isn't a bell curve, which means that the data was completely and perfectly spread, then really they should be using things like medians and interquartile ranges. But majority of papers will use means and standard deviations. That's fine, but just make sure that you do a bit of extra research and look into what stats are actually appropriate for that paper being looked at. And age, gender, and ethnicity. So what was made up in their sample, as you kind of mentioned before, the demographics, confounders as well. Confounders like age, gender, and ethnicity. Did they account for those, or did they just show you the unadjusted values? And then look at the value of the results. Are they generalizable? Is what I've said in this paper generalizable to the entire population, or are there some limitations to that? And what I said here is that to some extent, due to the 50,000 patients I analysed in this paper and the fact that it was in a London primary care setting with an ethnically diverse sample, a lot of these results can be generalised. But it is just South London, it is just primary care. We don't know what this might look like in secondary care, in hospitals. We don't know what this may look like in particularly children. So you've got to bear those things in mind. And levels of attrition. This wasn't relevant for this paper, but if you're looking at a paper that conducted a survey, how many people didn't follow up that survey, didn't participate in follow-ups? Or if you're looking at an RCT, how many patients didn't make it till the end and why for that intervention? Because then you'd be questioning whether it's actually effective. And in the conclusion, make sure that the authors have presented no new information, and all of the information that they've said so far should be summarized quite nicely in a conclusion that you can read and understand. If you don't understand the conclusion, alarm bells should be going off that this paper's probably not sure what they found, and it might not be clinically relevant. So if we were going to summarize all of that in a few paragraphs, I've put an example here. So you'd want to introduce the paper and kind of list a few facts that it had. So establishment of reference intervals specific for certain ethnicities may be of benefit. A large case study of primary care patients, and you can put the number that they looked at in brackets, suggests that there is a need for ethnicity-based reference ranges for serum vitamin B12, since higher concentrations were found in Black patients compared with Asian and white patients. And make sure you cite the paper that you've got that from, the paper that you critically appraised. However, physiologic states such as pregnancy, diet, and medications may alter vitamin B12 directly or indirectly, which were not accounted for in the study, and will have confounding effects on vitamin B12 status. So you've got to talk about the limitations. No study is perfect. In addition, although a diagnostic gold standard for vitamin B12 blood levels has yet to be found, the key functional markers, such as all of these things here, were not measured for these patients. So in this particular study, vitamin B12 can be done with a blood test, but you can actually get specific enzyme markers that will tell you more about whether somebody's truly got high B12 and why. They may have a disease. We did not know this. We just had the patient numbers and their blood test results, which we took B12 from. So therefore, it is unknown as to what extent the differences seen between ethnicities were driven by enzyme abundance or actual observed differences. And then you can talk about the rest of the literature. There is not much literature on this topic. Nevertheless, this evidence is consistent with other literature which suggests that Black people have high B12 because of their genetic makeup. And this is where you should be citing other studies you've read. Okay, so you're going to critically appraise the main study of interest, and then you're going to back up your points with other studies. Try and fit it into other literature, which is really nice because in the journal article, it is likely they've done that for you. Have a look at some of the things they've referenced and see if it actually makes sense. So I hope I haven't overloaded you there, but that's just an example of how to critically appraise methodology and how to actually summarize that. You do not need to write study design and sampling measures, everything. Focus on what is maybe relevant to your essay or your research project and try and tie it all up in 1 or 2 paragraphs. So essay competitions. The commonest way to win a national prize as a medical student is through an essay competition. Most of them are offered through the Royal colleges and many charities. And I really suggest everyone follows the new Royal College Med Students page. If I'm not, I think it's open to everyone. You don't have to be a UK student, but they post really great opportunities and talks that happen online that might get you a bit more excited about research and help you with networking as well. And I also obviously recommend my blog post on how to research different essay competitions with a bit more of my tips on how to write something that really piques your interest and the readers. What I would say is you don't need to be entering 5 essay competitions a year. But if you are someone who thinks you're not good at writing and thinks you're terrible at writing, I actually dare you and encourage you to enter just one competition. If you know what, you may not win, but the least you will get is feedback if you ask, and you'll realize that you become less and less scared of writing essays, and it is really good practice. Honestly, writing gets better with practice and patience. So writing a good essay. So before we go into...
sure I understand.
Sorry, my Apple Watch is listening to everything I'm saying. So before we get into structuring your essay, first, what I recommend is looking for a subject that piques your interest. If you absolutely love pediatrics, literally go on Google and type in pediatric essay competitions, because you've already got an interest in that subject. It's probably going to bolster your CV and you're going to find it enjoyable to write. Once you've done that, you've got to spend the appropriate time planning your essay. When you're entering a competition, try and treat it as if it's an assignment. If your assignment's in a month, you should kind of be starting to write it with that month given to you, so you have time to make it actually good quality. So I took at least a month to write both of my essays for the competitions that I won, and I treated these as if they were going to be examined. And the longer the essay, obviously the bigger the prize. So if it is 5,000 words, you're probably going to get more money, or it's going to be published in a journal. But there's equally the ones that I won. One of them was 1,500 words and it got published. So I personally think shorter essays are nicer and easier to write. Plan your ideas early, make spider diagrams, write down notes on what you could talk about, and begin compiling a list of relevant references that will back up your points. And then you can start writing. What I want you to do before you start writing is really read that question over and over again. Write the question out on a piece of paper and highlight specific words of the question and draw arrows out, and think about what you can write about. Some essay questions will even give you points to cover, and if you don't adequately cover those points, you're unlikely to win. So they want you to write creatively and succinctly about a topic and make sure it's well researched. So the most important thing is that you answer the question and have something interesting to say. I've lost a lot of essay, well, not lost, but I've not won a lot of essay competitions. I've entered about 8. And one of the feedback I always got is that you kind of just summarized the literature. You didn't really give us anything new. You didn't give us any solutions to the problems you spoke about, or you didn't put forward any unique ideas. And when I started doing that is when I actually won. So structure. So a basic essay, 3 parts to it, especially if it's between 1,000 1,500 words. You've got your introduction, where you're going to introduce the topic. You're going to definitely summarize what is already known about it, but you're going to give context and highlight significant parts of the literature, but also the gaps. Where are the gaps? What is not yet answered, and how does that relate to your question? So if it's asking you, I'll show you an example on the next page of an essay I did. What can surgery learn from other high-performance disciplines was a question I got asked. You're going to summarize what a high-performance discipline is. You're going to summarize what surgery's learned already. And then you're going to summarize what surgery has yet to learn. What are the parts of surgery that are not quite doing so well? Is it that patients are not having good outcomes? Is it that more and more advanced equipment is being used? Is it that patients are multi-morbid going into surgery now? So it's not the perfectly healthy young patient. It's patients with diabetes, COPD, obesity. How are we managing them in surgery? So you've really got to do your extra reading here. And once you've highlighted those gaps, you're setting the foundations for the rest of the essay. In the body, each paragraph should have one main idea, introduced and then backed up by a few references. I really like subtitles. I've used subtitles in every essay I've written. I think they're catchy. I think they signpost the reader to different sections. They do take up a few words, but I think it really adds something unique to your writing, and I'll show you an example of it on the next slide. But they're a really nice way to break up content and try to be unique and offer your own thoughts and solutions, like I mentioned before, in each of those paragraphs. And then your conclusion, the last paragraph of your essay, you want to summarize what you've said, what you've spoken about in a few sentences, but try not to repeat what you said in the introduction. You should be really summarizing the body. And remember, do not introduce any new ideas here. So this is just a few clips of the essay that I submitted. I had my introduction and I talked about the 3 ideas. The thing is, with a 1,500 word essay, I wouldn't do more than 3 ideas. They asked what surgery could learn from other high performance disciplines. So I chose aviation, Formula One, and elite sport. There were so many others. I think the runner-ups chose fast food restaurants, and other high performance disciplines like that, and had their own definitions for high performance disciplines. But I wanted to focus on 3 main ideas. And as you can see, for the introduction, I kind of spoke about how they were all different, but they were all high performance discipline. They each had the potential for catastrophic failure, but they had nearly error-free performance. So they designed systems to ensure that there were very minimal mistakes, which is what surgery wants to achieve, obviously. And then I spoke about the systems approach, which I was going to talk about in the rest of my essay, and that surgery needs to learn how to reduce human error and improve performance. I spoke about how the cockpit and the operating room are similar, and some things they could adopt from the aviation industry. I spoke about the surgeon and the professional sports person, being coached, and how surgeons in the UK don't have coaches. Once you go through the training program, and it's kind of like you're left to your own devices, but the reality is doctors and surgeons never stop learning, and coaching could be a really valuable tool to help them be better. And then Formula One and its contributions to surgery. So Formula One has already changed the way surgery is done. The Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is one of the biggest paediatric hospitals in the UK, actually learned a lot from the Ferrari team from Formula One. They came into the hospital and gave them a whole talk about everything. And they have like this lollipop man methodology where in the surgical room, they go through everything. They say, stop, what are we doing? Kind of similar to the WHO surgical safety checklist. So just those catchy subtitles already make you want to read this. They link with the introduction and then a conclusion to summarize everything. And I wanted to touch on something really important when it comes to writing, and that is paraphrasing. Academic writing is built on a lot of paraphrase material, but it's really important you learn how to do this correctly. So paraphrasing basically means putting someone else's words into your own instead of quoting them directly, but you do need to still reference them, okay? So we're going to do this throughout all of our careers, and it makes up journal publications. Nobody is necessarily writing everything from scratch and everything's creative and new. They are building off of pre-existing ideas, rewriting them in their own way, and then also saying, this is how I'm taking it further. So there's not actually a lot of pressure to come up with this new invention and you have to write a publication about this. It can literally just be using pre-existing ideas to springboard another idea that is your own. So why and what do you need to paraphrase? First of all, when you're paraphrasing, you need to have a goal in mind. And this could be to inform the reader. So you may have to paraphrase some findings that are important in the literature and provide background to your project. You might want to argue or support your point. So you might have to paraphrase another author's argument and their reasoning and how it's similar to what you're trying to say. You might want to emphasize with your reader and paraphrase the conclusion of a paper to get across significant findings. So I want to emphasize that mental health is a really terrible issue for young people. I might want to paraphrase what the government have said about mental health in young people and what the research shows. And then to critique, and that's going back to our critical appraisal. You have to paraphrase the overall message of a research article you've read and its limitations, and you've got to critique that. Read around the topic. So if you will usually find paragraphs of writing in journal articles, and you need to read it so many times to understand it, and that's normal. But what might help is actually reading above and below that paragraph to understand what the context of this work is. And write down what you've understood, because you can use this as an outline for your final piece. But I really recommend, I know people say read the abstract and you don't have to read the whole paper. Read the abstract, but really pick out parts of the paper that are relevant to read. You definitely should be reading the conclusion. You definitely should be giving the introduction at least a little bit of a read so you get a better idea of what the topic's all about. And statistical analysis, at least give that section a brief skim through to ensure that, okay, their methods are making sense to me. I understand what this project's all about. And identify keywords and phrases. What main ideas are you trying to get across? And draw out these important points and write them in your own words. So if I'm trying to look at mental health as being big problems for young people, I may want to look for keywords like prevalence, mortality, morbidity, health costs, educational attainment, life outcomes, because these are some of the things I'm going to try and use in my paper, because I want to talk about the fact that, this is the prevalence of mental health, this is what it's doing to young people, and these are the life outcomes they're having. And I need to paraphrase other resources to do that. So honestly, take advantage of opportunities. The most common way to get opportunities, I am a big Google fan. Just Google, literally. Google things you're interested in, projects you're interested in, essay competitions. The most common way to present any work you've done is a conference. Even if you don't have anything to present, I really implore you go to a conference. And the best thing about it is choose something you're interested in again. Literally type in pediatric neurosurgery conference, pathology conference. There's something for everyone. And even if you don't have anything to present, go there to network, go and attend it, see what the other research is like, what other students are doing and what professionals are doing in the career that you want to have. And then you'll be very inspired to then go and submit work to a next conference. Almost every medical society at your university will run a national undergraduate student conference, and this could be a great starting point for submitting an abstract, which I'm going to talk about soon. You submit an abstract before you present your poster. So when you're submitting to conferences, you're not actually submitting your poster, you're submitting your abstract, which is a 250-word summary of what your project's all about. And it doesn't always have to be original research. You could have done a systematic review, you could have done an editorial. Some conferences will want original research, but guys, that SSE, that scholarly project that you've put to bed and you're just so glad is over, bring it up, bring it back from the dead, submit that abstract to somewhere, and you'll be surprised at the replies you get. And you can submit the same abstract to multiple conferences. So why not take that opportunity, get about 4 or 5 presentations on your CV, and you've already demonstrated an interest in research without having to do as much work as you're probably thinking to yourself. As I mentioned before, with the Annals of Medicine and Surgery, that was a publication from an essay prize, and that's a nice certificate to have. I was the winner of another essay competition about how should adolescent health services change by 2040 to better accommodate young people. I got the highest mark in my SSE, which was nice. And I presented this to the dean of my medical school to get some extra money, because he was like, you used SPSS and I commend you for that. Even things that are available at your uni. So this Principal Global Leadership Award was only available to students in their second year, and it was a residential trip where we got all these talks from leaders like politicians, medical CEOs, and just honestly people from all different sorts of fields. And I was just interested in leadership and said, why not go? And I got a little certificate for it. So honestly, I think what a lot of medical students do is they underestimate themselves. They think that you have to have published this many papers or be this amazing at writing. And I'm talking as someone who had no experience of research before I went to medical school. I did English and maths like everybody else at school. I do enjoy writing, but I just decided to enter essay competitions when I saw a friend win one. And I was like, you know what? If she can do it, so can I. And I want you to think that. Trust me, I'm nothing particularly special, or there's no particular amount of hours that I put into this. It was literally just having that self-belief to have a go. And go into it with no expectations, and then if you win, it's even a better feeling. And you'll be surprised at how little amount of people are submitting to conferences or submitting to essay competitions. Something you're particularly interested and passionate about may not be what the next medical student is, and that's what I love about medicine. Jen, I don't know what your like favorite specialty is, but I'm sure that like there's an essay competition for it. What do you enjoy?
So I think I resonate with you a lot because I just did an elective in plastic surgery, and then my
Wow.
supervisor was telling me about how he had an audit for me to do, but it was like a really small project, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And then I completed it, and we presented it in like a week within the department, and he was like saying it's not going to get any prize, it's not going to get any competitions and stuff. And then I just go to Royal College of Medicine, and then I saw like a plastic surgery section, and I just submitted to that, and then actually get a poster presentation out of it. So I think it was brilliant.
And I mean, amazing, and congrats on that as well. And the thing is, sometimes doctors will underestimate as well. Like they've given you a project or they've given you some work, and they're like, let's not rest too much hope on it. We'll see where it goes. But actually, you've got to take the initiative, guys. When it comes to stuff in your curriculum as well, student selected components, any research that you've got to do as part of your curriculum, I really recommend in that first email when you're introducing yourself or getting to know your supervisor, I would like to get this published. I would like to take this further. Don't be afraid to say that. Be confident, show up, be present, and give it your best effort. And I promise you that supervisor will help you. I hope. There's some that are not as good, but I would like to believe that every supervisor who signs up to do this sort of stuff for medical schools is willing to help. And I've never had a bad experience. They've always been like, you know what, since you want to get it published, let's try and get it to a high quality level. And they'll take you more seriously. So honestly, don't be afraid to say. Some other places you can find opportunities. So as I mentioned, societies, conferences, go to them if you're not ready to present anything. That's mainly for like the first and second years. I'm not expecting you to have any research. I was literally just attending conferences I was interested in. Social media, like I said, the Royal Soc Med Students Instagram page, they literally post talks and essays, essay competitions, and like the deadlines coming up all the time. And guys, I'm not even kidding. There's an essay competition for everything. Some are even 500 words. You can do that in a text. So, yeah, you can definitely go for those. Social media, just said that. Progress with Jess, my website. I have a career building section where I do update with research internships, essay competitions, and other opportunities that I think are really good for developing your career as a medic beyond just your curriculum. And then obviously your curriculum, SSE, scholarly projects, literally reaching out to supervisors. The last thing I would say that I didn't include in this slide is a cold email. Jun, I'm not sure how you arranged your elective, but I've had to cold email so many doctors and said, look, I'm all the way here in the UK and I really want to come and shadow you for my elective across the world. Will you take me? Going to PubMed articles, and the first author always has their email. Message them, see what they're up to, see if they've got a project that you're interested in, and I guarantee, especially when they see you're a medical student, they'll at least respond and say, look, can't help you this time, but they will respond. But you won't know if you don't try. Joan, I don't know how you, that plastic surgery elective's insane.
It was arranged by a medical school, but I resonate a lot with the cold email thing because I do that a lot as well since like early years medical school. Like 90% of the time, you would just get ignored, but miracles would happen, and I truly believe in it.
Yeah. I think you basically cold emailed me. Well, you messaged me on LinkedIn. We'd never met each other before, but I was like, of course, why would I not? This would be a great opportunity. So you never know what might come out of it. And not just, you don't have to go for the consultants or the attendings. You can go for a fellow medical student in their final year, or a junior doctor, and I promise you they will be willing to help. Majority of people in medicine are not those saboteurs that we think they are. They are willing to help and like pull up the ladder to help you get involved in projects too. So academic posters, as I mentioned before, you've got to submit an abstract. This will help readers get an idea of what your paper's about so they can decide whether to read the full paper. It prepares them to follow detailed information and analyses that will go with your research. And it will help readers remember key points from your paper, and this will usually be judged by clinicians against some criteria. So if the conference has a certain theme, it has to meet that theme, it has to be this many words, it has to do this and this, and then if accepted, you'll get an email and they'll ask you to present as an oral presentation and do a PowerPoint like I am today, or you'll be asked to do a poster. And then there's usually a prize for the best presentation, best poster. And even if you don't get that prize, you will always get a certificate for participation and being there and actually presenting your poster or standing by your poster and fielding questions from people. So it's a win-win once you get accepted. And the last, these are some tips. I think I've seen a few messages in the chat which you've been sorting, Jun, but yes, you will get all the slides. These are some must-haves for posters, just really nice things that you, like a checklist that you should really be ticking off. You want to have your title, you want to have a short background to your project, so a little introduction, methods, results, conclusion, and references. I will say about references, you don't always need to have references if your information is quite well known. So remember, you're only referencing things that people wouldn't necessarily know about. So if you really are tight for space, I've got posters accepted that had no references on them, and that was fine. These are two kind of posters that I've submitted, and you will get these slides, but this is just a visual representation of those papers. So my poster on the right, I'm sorry, this is so small. This is from an ebook that I wrote, so I screenshot the graphics and tried to fit them on the slides, but if you zoom in, I'm sure it's fine. The poster on the right has been referenced, for example, but the poster on the left didn't need it. Try and make the diagrams the biggest feature of the poster. I actually think my poster on the right had way too much text, so I probably wouldn't do, like, my poster on the right was done earlier than my poster on the left. So over time, you will get better at posters, and also you will change up the design for different conferences, which can be quite fun. I do make all my posters on PowerPoint. Doesn't have to be difficult. This doesn't take long, I promise you. And get your supervisor to have a look over it before you actually present it at the conference. So the publication timeline is the last thing I wanted to cover, because I know I do get a lot of questions about this, and this is kind of like not talked about in medical school whatsoever, unless you have a sit-down talk with your supervisor. So the publication timeline, I would give yourself a year or to a year and a half to just from the beginning to the end of a publication of a journal article, and that is aspirational, because this 3 to 6 months of writing up your manuscript, cover letter, and submitting, it could take you a year. Medical school is medical schooling, and you need to pass your exams and do all the tick box activities for med school, and a publication shouldn't really be taking priority over that. So it can take a bit longer to write your manuscript. What you submitted for your SSE probably won't be journal article quality. You will need to do a lot of editing, and that will be done with your supervisor. So it depends on your availability and theirs, but there is genuinely no rush. A lot of the work that I've managed to get to publication, it required about 9 months of going back and forth. And as you can see, the next arrow, once you submit, it will go through peer review, and then you've got to wait for them to critique the hell out of your paper. And it will be checked for plagiarism. It will be assessed by clinicians who are experts in the field, and it will be determined if it fits the aims and scopes of the journal, which is really important as to why you should research your journal before submitting, which I'll show you as well. But your supervisor is really, really helpful in those things. And in about 3 to 5 months after submitting, you will receive a decision on that article. Now, majority of us will get a reject, but asked to revise or asked to resubmit. You might get an outright reject as well, but you will have all of these comments to work on, which is really nice. So you'll always get feedback, and I promise you it's painful, but every feedback you receive will make the paper better. So I think the my most recent rejection has been my fourth one for a systematic review. I've been trying to publish since 2021. So it's 2023 now. That's about a year and a bit. And this latest one was like, we want you to revise and resubmit. So I would get rejections from all the others with all these comments that I had to work on. And as I've worked on each of these comments and the paper will transform, then I resubmit. I finally got a revision and resubmit, which is a good sign. It means that they just want you to make a few changes and they're willing to accept it for publication once you've done those changes. So you'll be provided with peer reviewer comments, and it will have like bullet points that you have to answer every single one. And you will have to resubmit with a letter detailing how you've answered every single one of those comments. You will then receive a new decision. You might be asked to do more revisions and resubmissions, but you will get published. The publication game is not about who's the best and who's the genius. It's actually about who can persevere. And if you're a person who's been knocked back before and has still got up and tried again, then publication is definitely within your reach. You just need to keep going. So the journal submission checklist, decide what type of article your work is. Is it a systematic review? Is it a original research piece? Is it an editorial, which is what my essay competition was? And if you're not sure, go and ask your supervisor, read the author guidelines, and see where it fits in. Choose a journal. I have always asked for people's advice on how to choose a journal because this is just not something that I'm good at as a student. And it's absolutely normal if you're not either. I don't know what journal's best and what journal's not. Obviously, you want to go for a high impact journal, which means that the journal has a lot of readership and interest and citations, which is great for your general career in research. If you're really thinking about academia, it can make you look good on ResearchGate. But you really want to choose a journal that you have a high chance of getting accepted in. If your research is about substance use, look for journals with substance use in the title for a start, because you already meet the scopes, because your paper's about substance use. If your paper focuses on a particular area, if your paper has participants that are children, look for a pediatric journal, something that's relevant to children or child health. Write a cover letter. Loads of templates can be found online, and register for an author account and then submit. And in the cover letter, what you want to be talking about is, hi, dear name of the editor, I am submitting an article for this journal. This is how it meets the scopes. This is why it's of interest to readers. Thank you for your consideration. Yours sincerely. And like I said before, do not be fearful of failure or be put off by rejections. You must persevere. Don't rush and seek help from supervisors. I love a good email to a supervisor and say, look, this is what I've done so far, but I need you to help me with the rest. You have to seek help with this. No one gets published on their own. And it's a journey, and it requires a lot of input from people who are senior to you and know how to do this sort of thing. So some take-home messages, because I've spoken for a lot. Spend time seeking out opportunities to find out more about yourself. Yes, having a great CV and a great LinkedIn profile is all well and good, but actually some of these opportunities allow you to meet people that change your life, quite literally, and change your trajectory and make you think about medicine in a different way. I never thought I would be interested in academic research until I started applying myself and gave it a chance. I don't think I'll do a PhD or become a professor, but all of this experience has made me so much more confident. If someone was to say, oh, can you analyze this data? 9 times out of 10, I probably could, unless it was very, very complex. And even then, there's a challenge to learn something more. Keep open-minded and be engaged in opportunities that come your way. I know an SSC and a scholarly project can be a eye roll moment. Oh, I have to do this as part of my curriculum. But actually put in effort. And guys, I won like £750 from presenting that SSE. I took a nice holiday. Okay, you can actually reap rewards from this that is helpful for a student. Every little helps. So there is an incentive to do well beyond just a CV. Share your achievements. LinkedIn, social media, all of these things can widen your surface area to opportunities. And like I've said before, having a great CV is the only way somebody can tell what your track record is. So you're going to have your transcript, but your CV is going to be that real insight into whether someone takes you on for an elective, whether someone lets you join a research project. And I want you guys to have lots of different and interesting things on there that have not just come from being at medical school. Do not fear failure. This is not an easy journey. I've been rejected so many times, and I can do a whole different talk on that. But being knocked back is not personal, and it's not about you. It's just a fact of life. And as someone who it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. You're going to miss sometimes. It's the people who are not throwing enough that are getting bullseye every time, because they're making very calculated guesses and attempts at things. Be uncalculated, be messy, be all over the place, be out there, and look at things that are gonna add to your life and that you're interested in and want to just go for. And you don't always need to reinvent the wheel. If there's an opportunity that you're going for and you find on LinkedIn that somebody's done it, or you want to go for an essay competition that I've done, ask me for help, and I'm happy to send you like what I submitted, how I found the process. When I applied to Cambridge, I found people who'd gone to Cambridge as an intercalating student, and it gave me so much more insight into the process. Please, if there is a person who's done it before, try not to go in blind, try not to reinvent stuff, because you will struggle, you will stress yourself out, and there's just no need. So thank you. I'm willing to take any questions. These are my social medias, and I do post a lot about research. And I have this book where I share like all my examples of my work and how to write a cover letter, how to go through rejections when you come to a journal article, and just a few things like, for example, basic stats you should know as a medical student and principles of statistics and things. So if you are interested, please have a look at my website.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. And just want to congratulate you on the recent acceptation of the systematic review. It's really cool. And I'm sure everyone is very inspired today, and I certainly am by your research journey. It's very inspiring. And your words are very encouraging and inspiring as well. And if everyone could fill in the feedback form, would be really helpful. You receive the slides as well. And if you have any questions, you can message it to Jessica, or just feel free to enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Oh, great. That's really, really good. Thank you.
Just a quick summary to take away. Thank you so much, Jessica. I just had a question, because you obviously are very interested in SFP. Where would you apply next year?
That's really, really good question. So, yeah, I am interested in the SFP. The reason why I recommend the SFP is because there is no downside in trying to do it. You still apply to the standard foundation program. It's just an extra application. You get the chance to do an interview, which I think is so important for medics. Get in uncomfortable situations. Get someone questioning you about your passion, because how often does that happen, you know? So I think I'm really torn. I'm not quite interested in medical education. I think I'll definitely go for the research or the leadership and management route. But I think research is probably a bit down my street. And at London, I live in London, so I'd like to say. Are you applying for the SFP, Jen?
I've applied, and I will be doing a med at SFP in Sheffield this August.
Oh, congrats!
No, thank you so much.
Oh, med-ed is fun. It is fun. You do a lot of teaching. So you're going to be doing a lot of this.
Yeah, but like you, I prefer to do research and want to do some medical education research in particular, and also, venture in something that might be helpful for specialty application afterwards. But I just want to enjoy the 4 months teaching, I think. I look forward to that.
Are you thinking about plastic surgery?
Yeah, I'm thinking about plastic surgery.
Nice.
Were you interested in psychiatry?
Yes, so my interests are between pediatrics and psychiatry, and it will be specifically child and adolescent psychiatry. I'm also still open to pediatric surgery, but getting that experience at medical school is unheard of. Um, Pediatric surgery is not really one of our rotations. Although pediatrics is. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, I see Ida's question. So I've been working on a systematic review, and after meeting with my supervisor, he mentioned that he is interested in getting others in the field involved to help with the likelihood of getting published. How would you recommend going about getting people involved? So one thing I actually should have talked about in this presentation actually is the kind of sequence of authorship. So to be a first author of a paper, you have done the most work. And if this is your systematic review, you've written majority of it and you've done most of the work, then as long as you kind of make clear to him, yes, you're happy for other people to be added, but you will remain the first author. I recommend getting people on board, because whether you have 10 people in a authorship line or 3, as long as you're first, it doesn't really matter. Or as long as you're an author, it doesn't really matter. But I think the reason I say make sure you're first is I'm assuming you've done the most work and you're kind of worried about other people piggybacking off of that. But honestly, I've not been first. I've been first author for most of my work because I've done the most work on it. But in situations where I haven't, I've done things like screened papers for systematic reviews, or provided grammar and spelling review to the final manuscript, or revised the discussion a little bit. So I've helped out minimally, like here and there. But I've contributed to the paper, so they've provided me with authorship. But if you are the person who has done the most work, just be like, yes, I'd be happy to have people on. Can I just confirm that I'll still be main author? Don't be afraid of saying this stuff, because you're still in your early career and this stuff matters a lot to you. A professor or a PhD scholar that he's bringing on, this could be their 7th or 8th publication, whereas you, like, it matters. So yeah, as long as you're in the correct sequence of work, because it's the person who does the most work all the way down to the person who did the least / supervised the project, which is how professors get so many publications, because you just put their name on the end because they gave you some guidance. Then that's fine, and that's how authorship should work. That is a legal requirement to be published in a journal. It should be the order that people put in the work. So if you put in the most, you should be first. If you put in kind of like a middle amount, you should be second or third, and so on. I hope that helps.
Yep, that's really helpful. Thank you so much. I realize we're already at 7 o'clock and we don't really have any more questions. And I think we should end the talk here, if that's okay.
Amazing. I'm glad you found it useful, and have a great evening. There's one question.
There's one question. Yep.
Oh gosh. Can you explain the difference between systematic and literature research? So yeah, this is something that I touch on all the different types of research, specifically systematic and literature research, in my ebook, and I talk all beginning and end to systematic review and literature research. But a literature review is going through the literature and summarizing it, and then putting it into groups of themes. So, okay, let's say I was doing the mental health of children and young people, a literature review. What I would do is I would read, I would still have the same methodology as a systematic review. So I'd look through certain databases, I'd have a search strategy, look through the literature, but I wouldn't be trying to summarize results necessarily. I'd be trying to summarize ideas. So you would divide it into themes. You might divide it into prevalence, treatments, and trajectory of the future. Those would be your 3 themes for child and adolescent mental health. Whereas a systematic review, you have to be more specific. You'd have to ask the question, is substance use more prevalent in homeless adolescents? Or is substance use more prevalent in adolescents with mental health issues? Then you would build a search strategy on that, and you would have to actually extract data from studies like RCTs mainly. You wouldn't really be including other studies, and you'd be talking about those quantitative results. In a literature review, you don't have to do that. You should be summarizing ideas in the literature. But yeah, it's 7. I'm sure everybody wants to go and have dinner or something now, so I will leave it there.
Yeah, no worries. I just want to make sure I get this correct. Are you saying literature review is just something smaller than a systematic review? Is that right?
Um, a literature review can still be really big, but it's summarizing
Yeah.
ideas of papers. It's like
Okay.
kind of what I mentioned when I was doing the critical appraisal. It will be
Yeah.
summarizing paragraphs like that. A systematic review is actually extracting data from these things. So being like, okay, this paper had an odds ratio of 1 point something, but this other paper has an odds ratio of this. Maybe homeless adolescents don't actually use substances as much as possible, and the literature is conflicting. A literature review only focuses on mainly the ideas. But anyone who has further questions or wants me to send any specific resources, if you drop me a DM, any of these platforms, and have a look at my website blog posts, then just contact me on there and I'll always try to respond.
Again, thank you so much, Jessica.
No
It's very,
worries.
very inspiring.
No worries. Bye, everyone.
Bye.